The school sat at the top of a long hill, tall and shiny like something taken from a picture in a magazine. Every morning it looked busy and bright, filled with the children of business owners, doctors, and people who drove expensive cars. The building had big glass windows, polished floors, and walls decorated with trophies from music shows and science competitions. To many people, it was a symbol of success. But to the man who pushed a mop across those shiny floors before sunrise, it was simply his workplace. He was known to everyone as Mr. Alvarez. He was quiet, soft-spoken, and never tried to get in anyone's way. He came to the school early in the morning, long before most teachers arrived. He cleaned the hallways, wiped desks, emptied bins, and made sure everything looked perfect before the students walked in. People rarely stopped to talk to him. Some smiled politely. Others barely noticed he was there. But he never complained. He liked to work hard, and he took pride in leaving the school spotless each day. What most people didn't know was that he had a daughter studying there. Her name was Lena. She had joined the school only a few months earlier on a scholarship. It had been a dream chance, but also something that made her nervous. She knew she did not come from the same world as the other students. She did not own expensive clothes. She did not live in a big house, and she definitely did not show up in a luxury car. Her father dropped her off each morning with an old model car that sometimes made funny sounds when it started. Still, Lena tried her best to fit in. She kept her hair tied neatly, carried her books carefully, and walked through the halls with quiet confidence. But even with her calm nature, she could feel the weight of curious eyes following her. Many students knew she was the janitor's daughter. That fact alone was enough for some to make assumptions about her. They whispered things, not loudly enough to get in trouble, but loud enough for her to hear. She kept walking, pretending not to notice, even though she did. The teachers were not all unkind, but a few of them treated her differently. One of them was the music teacher, Miss Hargrove. She was strict, organized, and very proud of her music program. She had guided many students to competitions and loved being recognized as the teacher behind the school's impressive orchestra. But she also had a habit of looking down on students she believed had little potential or who did not belong in the arts. For reasons Lena did not understand, Ms. Hargrove seemed to think she was one of those students. Every Wednesday, the music class gathered in a large room filled with instruments' violins hanging on the wall, pianos polished to a bright shine, and shelves holding drums and flutes. The ceiling was high, and the room always smelled faintly of wood and string polish. It should have felt magical, but to Lena, it often felt like a place where she had to stay small and quiet. Whenever the class began, Miss Hargrove would scan the room, her eyes passing over Lena with a mix of impatience and disapproval. She rarely asked her questions, rarely called on her, and when she did, it was usually followed by a thin smile that didn't feel friendly. It was as if she wanted to prove something, maybe that Lena didn't have the talent or background needed to be part of her world of music. One morning, when the air outside was still cool and the sky looked pale, Lena walked into the music room and took her usual seat in the back row. Students around her chatted excitedly about weekend trips, new gadgets, or fancy restaurants their families had taken them to. Lena listened quietly. She did not have stories like those to share, and she did not mind. She preferred watching people, studying expressions, and learning from moments others ignored. She looked at her hands resting on her lap. They were steady, strong, used to work, not just books. She wondered what her father was doing at that moment. Most likely wiping down the cafeteria tables or fixing something that had broken. She admired him deeply. He had raised her alone for years, ever since her mother passed away. He never complained about long shifts, never let her see the exhaustion in his eyes. He only encouraged her to work hard, to be kind, And to chase opportunities even when they felt out of reach. As the class settled, Miss Hargrove stepped to the front. Her heels clicked sharply on the wooden floor. "Good morning, everyone," she said, though her voice didn't sound warm. "Today, we will continue preparing for the spring showcase. This event is extremely important for our school. It brings parents, sponsors, and community members. So, professionalism is expected." The students nodded eagerly. Many of them loved performing. Some were even hoping to be noticed by talent scouts or music tutors who attended events like this. Ms. Hargrove began, directing students to take out their instruments. Violins were lifted from cases, bows tightened, piano chairs adjusted. Soft notes floated through the room as students warmed up. The sound should have been beautiful, but it was uneven, with different melodies clashing together. Then, something happened that Lena noticed immediately. A few of the teachers standing at the side of the room, assistants who helped during rehearsals, were whispering to each other. They were not talking about music. They were looking in her direction. One smiled in a way that felt wrong. Another raised a brow as if amused by something. Lena's gaze dropped to her feet. She had felt that look before, one that judged her before she even opened her mouth. She tried to focus on her notebook, pretending she didn't feel their eyes. She began writing, though she wasn't paying attention to the words. She just wanted to feel invisible for a moment. But she was not invisible. Miss Hargrove clapped her hands sharply. "Settle down, please. Let's begin." Then her tone changed slightly, so subtle that only someone sensitive like Lena would catch it. "Before we start, I think we should have a bit of fun." Several students looked up with interest. Fun was not a word Miss Hargrove usually used. The teacher let her eyes move around the room slowly, dramatically. Then she stopped, fixing her gaze on Lena. "There she is," she said. Her voice held a sugary sweetness that didn't match her eyes. A few students exchanged quick glances. They knew what was coming. They had seen it before. A small joke here, a playful jab there. Nothing cruel enough to get in trouble, but enough to draw uncomfortable laughter. "Why don't we have our newest student show us her musical abilities?" Miss Hargrove said, tilting her head slightly. Lena's heart skipped. She didn't know if the teacher was serious or joking, but either way, she felt a wave of heat rise to her face. "I'm not sure," she began softly, but Miss Hargrove cut her off. "Oh, come now. Don't be shy. We could all use a little inspiration." Her voice carried a smirk. One of the teachers at the side chuckled under his breath. A few students giggled. Lena swallowed hard. She did not want to be humiliated. She had seen the way certain students were used as examples, mocked gently in ways that weren't obvious enough to report. She feared becoming the center of that. She glanced at the violins hanging neatly on the wall. She avoided looking at them too long. They reminded her of something she kept locked away, something that still hurt when she thought about it too deeply. Her hands tightened on her notebook. Ms. Hargrove tapped her foot impatiently. "Well, we're waiting." Lena forced herself to breathe slowly. She had two choices: refuse and make the moment even more awkward, or step forward and let the laughter fall around her. Neither felt good. Neither felt fair. But before she even made her choice, a student called out from the front row, "Let her try." "It'll be fun?" Another chimed in, "Yeah, why not?" Their voices were not mean, but they were careless, spoken by people who didn't understand how heavy simple words could feel. And still, Lena stood up. She did it quietly, almost gently, as if her movement were an apology. She walked toward the front of the room, keeping her eyes on the floor so she wouldn't have to see the amused faces or the raised eyebrows. Her heart thudded in her chest with each step. She could hear whispers behind her. "She's really going to do it. What does she even know? Is her dad watching from a broom closet?" Lena pretended not to hear them. She reached the violin wall and paused, her hand hovering for a moment above the instrument's dot. Her fingertips brushed the polished wood. A familiar warmth stirred inside her, something she had not felt in a long time, but no one in the room knew that. To them, she was just the janitor's daughter, trying to touch an instrument she probably had no business touching. Ms. Hargrove folded her arms, looking entertained. "Go on," she said. And Lena gently took down a violin. She held it carefully, almost tenderly, as if it were something precious. No one expected what would happen next. Not yet. All they saw was a girl they underestimated, holding an instrument they assumed she didn't understand. But the moment was already changing, even if they didn't realize it, even if they still believed this was all a joke meant to make them laugh. Lena took a slow breath, steadying herself, not knowing that this small moment was the beginning of something none of them were prepared for. When Lena held the violin in her hands, the room changed in a quiet way that no one noticed at first. The students were still whispering and nudging each other, thinking this moment would turn into a joke. They expected her to push the violin under her chin the wrong way or squeak out a note so bad that everyone would laugh. Even the teachers waiting at the side looked relaxed, almost eager to see what would happen. The only person who didn't seem amused was Lena herself. She stood there, holding the violin with careful fingers, trying to steady her breath. The instrument felt strangely familiar, almost like an old friend she hadn't seen in years. She didn't lift it yet. She simply looked down at it, letting the weight settle in her hands. She remembered how her mother used to clean the wood gently with a soft cloth, how she would whisper, "Treat it with respect, and it will speak for you." That memory rose like a warm light inside her chest, but she pushed it back gently. She couldn't think about her mother now. Not here. Not when so many eyes were waiting for her to fail. Ms. Hargrove cleared her throat loudly. "Any day now," she said, sounding slightly annoyed now that Lena wasn't providing entertainment quickly enough. Few students laughed quietly. Lena lifted the violin slowly. Her movements were calm, not rushed. She placed the violin under her chin the correct way, though no one expected her to know how. A few students frowned, surprised. One whispered, "Wait, she's holding it right." Another shrugged. Maybe she saw it in a video or something. Lena didn't hear them clearly. Her mind had gone somewhere else, somewhere quieter. She reached for a bow from the table and tested the tension of the hair with almost automatic ease. She didn't even realize she was doing something skillful. It was simply a habit, something her hands remembered even if her mind felt far away. But the teacher leaning against the music stand noticed. His eyebrows lifted slightly. He looked toward Miss Hargrove, as if to ask whether she had seen it too. But she didn't. She was too busy smirking, waiting for the moment where the room would burst into laughter. Lena adjusted the violin under her chin, pushing her hair back gently so it wouldn't get caught. Her fingers rested along the strings, and she let her thumb settle into place. She closed her eyes for a second, feeling the way the wood vibrated faintly with her breath. She wasn't ready to play yet. She just wanted a second to settle her nerves. The room didn't give her that second. "Oh, please," a student near the front whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "She's pretending like she knows something. Does she honestly think she'll impress anyone?" Another muttered. Lena heard those comments. They slid into her ears like cold drops of water. She opened her eyes slowly, reminding herself that she had faced harder things. She had stood beside her father through hospital visits. She had moved schools 3 times because rent kept rising. She had watched children make fun of her father's job while he wiped up spills and fixed broken things without expecting thanks. She could survive. A few teenagers staring at her. Ms. Hargrove tapped the music stand with her pencil. "Let's begin, please. Play something simple. A scale, perhaps. That should be manageable." Her tone was sweet on the surface, but sharp underneath. Lena nodded once. She lifted the bow. Her hand was steady, though her heart pounded fast in her chest. She drew in a breath and placed the bow lightly on the string. She wasn't planning to show anything. She didn't want to impress anyone. She just wanted to keep this moment calm. But the room didn't stay calm. A student sitting near the back snorted loudly. "This is going to be great," he whispered to his friend. Someone else added, "I bet she can't even make a sound." Lena tried to push those voices aside. She lowered the bow again and tried to focus. But before she could begin, another teacher standing near the doorway spoke in a low voice, not meant to be heard, but still reaching her ears. "I don't know why we're wasting time," he murmured. "We should be rehearsing actual performers." Actual performers. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She wasn't trying to be a performer. She wasn't trying to take anyone's place. She was just doing what she was told. Lena inhaled slowly and let the breath leave her body at the same steady pace. She raised the bow once more. That was when Miss Hargrove added one last remark, meant to sound harmless but slicing much deeper. "If she plays even a few correct notes, I'll be impressed." The room chuckled. Something inside Lena shifted, not anger, but a slow, quiet resolve. A memory bloomed in her mind, her mother sitting beside her when she was small, guiding her bow, whispering, "You don't have to play loudly to be strong. You just have to play honestly." Lena lifted her chin slightly. She placed the bow on the strings with intention, but she didn't play. Not yet. She looked at the violin wall behind her. There were rows and rows of beautiful instruments, each one polished, maintained, and cared for. Students took them home, practiced with private tutors, brought them back with new cases or new bows. They had lessons, money, and time. Lena had none of that. What she had was memory. What she had was love for something she had lost. What she had was a quiet strength that had carried her. Through years of feeling out of place. She turned her eyes forward again. All she saw were amused faces waiting to enjoy her mistake. One student whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Can she hurry up? Some of us actually need to practice." Another added, "This is taking forever." Miss Hargrove looked at her with exaggerated patience. "We don't have all day." Lena lowered the bow again. She felt the weight of everyone's expectations pressing onto her shoulders. Not expectations of greatness, expectations of failure. She thought of her father, pushing his mop along the hallway that morning. She remembered how he had paused when she stepped out of the car, giving her his usual smile that said, "You can handle whatever comes today." His smile was small, but to her, it felt like a shield. She straightened her back quietly. She lifted the bow one more time, this time with purpose. But again, she didn't play yet. Something else caught her attention. It was the way the room felt. The air was still. Too still. Like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for a moment they believed would turn into a joke they could talk about later. Lena's hand trembled just slightly, not from fear, but from the tension of being watched so closely. She placed her fingers on the fingerboard gently. They rested exactly where they needed to be. She didn't even need to think about it. A student in the second row frowned. "Wait, why does she look like she's done this before?" His friend shook his head. "She's probably just guessing." Lena almost smiled. It wasn't a real smile, more like the ghost of one. She let the bow touch the string again. She breathed in through her nose. Her shoulders softened. The grip in her chest eased just a little. Then Miss Hargrove said, "Enough waiting. Play." The sharpness in her voice cut through the room. Lena closed her eyes for one more second, grounding herself. She knew she couldn't stay frozen any longer. She had to play something, even if only to get the moment over with. Dot. She drew the bow across the string. A single note filled the room clear. Warm and even. Dot. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was clean. The students stopped whispering. The teachers at the side straightened slightly. Lena played another note. Then another. A simple scale, just as she was asked. The room, which had been filled with chatter and laughter moments earlier, fell into a quiet that felt strange. Dot. Her bow moved gently, but surely. The notes flowed one after the other, balanced, smooth, as if her hands remembered every step of the path they were traveling. Dot. No one laughed. Dot. No one whispered. A girl in the front row blinked slowly, confused. Hold on, she whispered. That sounds good. A boy behind her frowned. No way. She must be copying someone. That can't be her. But it was her. Lena continued the scale, her eyes still lowered. She wasn't trying to show off. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply playing what she remembered. When she finished the last note of the scale, she lowered the bow. A few students exchanged uncertain glances, not sure whether they should clap, laugh, or stay quiet. Miss Hargrove's expression had changed slightly. The smirk had softened into something else. Confusion, maybe. Or disbelief. Well, she said slowly, trying not to sound surprised. You didn't squeak. That's something. A few students gave a small laugh, but even they didn't sound confident about it. Lena exhaled softly. She could have stopped there. She could have handed back the violin and gone to her seat. But the moment wasn't finished. Not yet. Before anyone could speak again, one of the teachers near the wall said, "Do it again." His voice wasn't mocking. It was curious. Lena looked up at him. He nodded once, encouraging her in a way she didn't expect. "Try it again," he said. "But this time, play whatever you want." Whatever she wanted. No one had said those words to her in a long time. The room stared at her again, but something was different now. The air had shifted. The jokes had faded. The amusement had weakened. Lena lifted the bow slowly. Her heart beat quietly. Not loudly. She placed the bow on the string, and though she didn't play yet, everyone in the room could feel that something unexpected was about to happen. When Lena lifted the bow again, the room felt different from before. It wasn't loud anymore. It wasn't full of jokes or whispers or giggles. It was quiet in a tense, almost nervous way, as if everyone was waiting to see if what they just heard from her had been an accident or something real. Even Lena felt that pressure, though she tried not to let it touch her. She kept her eyes downward, letting her fingers rest gently on the strings, letting the weight of the moment settle like soft dust around her. The teacher near the wall nodded at her again, his face steady and calm, unlike the others. His eyes were not mocking. They were curious. He seemed to be seeing something no one else had noticed until now. "Go ahead," he said softly. "Just play what feels right. Play what feels right." Those words echoed in her mind, stirring something deep within her chest. No one had said that to her in years. Not since her mother. Most people told her what to play, how loudly, how gently. There was never space for her to decide. Hearing those words now brought back tiny pieces of memories she kept sealed away. Her mother's hands guiding hers. Her small fingers tracing music notes on old sheets of paper. The soft glow of a lamp as they practiced late at night, not because they had to, but because they loved the shared quiet. She remembered laughter, not loud laughter, but the warm, soft kind that filled the house like sunshine. She blinked gently, letting those memories float and fade without overwhelming her. Then she lifted her eyes, only slightly, enough to glimpse the room in front of her. Every student was watching, Some leaned forward in their chairs. Others sat up straighter. A few students had forgot to even hold their instruments properly, frozen mid-movement. Even Miss Hargrove was paying close attention now. Her eyebrows were drawn together, her posture a little stiff. She didn't look amused anymore. She looked unsure. Lena took a breath so quiet only she could feel it. She placed the bow on the string, and she began to play. The first note came out smooth, fuller than before, almost warm. The sound drifted through the room slowly, like a soft ribbon being pulled through the air. It wasn't showy or loud. It wasn't meant to impress. It was simply honest. The second note followed, then the third. She wasn't playing a scale this time. She wasn't repeating something she had been taught long ago. These notes came from somewhere inside her, somewhere gentle and old and familiar. The melody began to form on its own, each note connected to the next as naturally as breathing. Students stared, stunned into silence. Lena didn't open her eyes. She didn't need to. Her hands remembered the path. Her bow moved across the strings with a steady flow, gliding forward as though guided by something soft and invisible. The melody grew slightly, opening like a flower in quiet morning light. A few students exchanged looks, not mocking ones this time, but ones filled with surprise. One boy whispered, "Is this real?" A girl beside him shook her head, but she wasn't denying it. She was simply overwhelmed. She knows what she's doing. Another student murmured, "That can't be luck. Nobody picks up a violin and plays like that." Lena was unaware of their whispers. She was drifting inside the music. The room around her faded into soft shadows. The lights, the chairs, the other students, all became distant as her focus deepened. Her mother had once told her, "When you truly play, the world becomes quiet enough for your heart to speak." She had never understood that fully until now. Her bow pressed a little more firmly into the string, the sound growing stronger, richer. The melody shifted into something a bit braver, not loud, but more expressive. It moved like a story being told without words. A story about loss, memory, hope, and a quiet strength carried over the years. The teachers standing along the wall exchanged stunned glances. One whispered under his breath, "This girl, she plays like she's trained." Another replied softly, "Better. This is natural talent." Even Miss Hargrove slowly lowered her folded arms, leaning forward slightly, as if trying to catch every note. Her face lost its hard expression for the first time since the class began. Lena's fingers moved quickly now, dancing over the strings with a confidence she didn't know she still had. She shifted positions smoothly, sliding her hand up the fingerboard to reach notes that echoed softly around the room. The melody curled and lifted, creating a gentle wave of sound that washed through the space like a fresh breeze. She wasn't performing that, she was remembering. The room stayed unbelievably still. Even the air felt frozen in place. No one dared to interrupt. No one dared to speak. Even the students who loved to make jokes lowered their gazes, their chests rising and falling slowly as if afraid breathing too loudly would disrupt the moment. One student in the back wiped her hand under her eye. She whispered to her friend, "Why does this make me feel something?" "It's just a violin." Her friend whispered back, "No, it's not just that. It's her. She's different." For a moment, it didn't matter who Lena was, or where she came from, or what her father did for work. None of that existed here. There were only notes and breath and silence filling the room in a way nobody had expected. Lena moved into the last part of the melody, slowing gradually. The song softened, becoming almost fragile. The bow glided lightly, creating a gentle whisper of sound that faded like a sigh. She ended with a single note that lingered in the air for a heartbeat, hanging there in the stillness before settling into silence. And then nothing. The room didn't react right away. It couldn't. It was too full of the music that had just happened. It took several seconds before anyone even shifted in their chair. The silence wasn't awkward now. It was stunned. Finally, someone breathed out a soft, "Wow." A student whispered, "I didn't know she could play like that." Another student stared at her with wide eyes. "She plays better than half the people in this class." A teacher shook his head slightly, still processing. How did we not know? Even Miss Hargrove looked different. Her face wasn't smug or superior anymore. There was a flicker of something like surprise, or maybe embarrassment, buried under her controlled expression. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out for a moment. Lena finally opened her eyes. She blinked softly, adjusting to the room again. Her chest rose and fell gently as she settled back into the present. Her hands trembled just slightly, not from fear, but from the emotion the music had brought out of her. She looked around, unsure of what reaction to expect. A few students watched her with open mouths. Others looked down, ashamed that they had laughed earlier. Some seemed embarrassed to meet her eyes. Ms. Hargrove finally found her voice. That was. Her words stuck. She cleared her throat and tried again. That was unexpected. Unexpected. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but it wasn't a criticism either. It simply showed how unprepared she had been for what happened. Lena didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her music had spoken louder than any words she could offer. The teacher near the wall stepped forward slightly. That wasn't just good, he said, his voice low but certain. That was the work of someone who knows music deeply. A ripple moved through the class. Ms. Hargrove's cheeks reddened faintly. It was clear she wasn't pleased about being proven wrong in front of her students. Well, she said quickly, trying to regain control of the room, we can't let this distract us. We have a showcase to prepare for. But her tone wasn't steady anymore. It wobbled in a small, noticeable way. A student raised his hand hesitantly. Shouldn't she, play something in the showcase? Several heads turned toward him, including Miss Hargrove's. Her jaw tightened. We will discuss that later, she said in a crisp voice. Another student murmured, she deserves it more than half of us. Someone else nodded. Yeah, she should be in it. Voices rose softly, agreeing. Some remained silent, but their expressions showed they couldn't dismiss what they had heard. Lena stood still, holding the violin tightly, unsure how to feel. Her heart wasn't steady anymore. She felt a mixture of fear, confusion, relief, and a quiet warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She had not meant to show so much of herself. She had not meant to draw attention. She just wanted to get through the moment without being mocked. But now, everything had changed. Everyone in the room knew something about her they hadn't known before, something she hadn't shown anyone in years. Her mother's voice echoed softly in her memory. There will come a day when the world sees you. Don't be afraid of that day. Maybe this was that day. Lena lowered the violin slowly. The room remained quiet, as if unsure how to return to normal after what had just happened. She took a small step back, almost hoping she could slip into the background again. But she knew that wasn't possible anymore. Not after this. Not after they heard her. Truth without her saying a single word. The moment Miss Hargrove regained her posture, she said firmly, Everyone, back to practice. We're behind schedule. Her voice was tight. Too tight, but the way she avoided Lena's eyes said everything. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. Lena exhaled softly as she returned the violin to her side. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know how her father would react when she told him, or whether she should tell him at all. She didn't know if the teachers would treat her differently tomorrow, or if students would start whispering new things. But one thing was certain. The moment she placed that bow on the string, everything in that room changed, and it wasn't a joke anymore. The next morning, the school felt different, even though nothing around Lina had actually changed. The same posters hung on the walls. The same students hurried through the halls. The same cold breeze slipped in each time the main doors opened. But inside Lina, something felt shifted, like she had stepped over a line she didn't know existed until now. She kept thinking about the way the auditorium fell silent the day before, about how the music seemed to move through her without effort. She hadn't planned any of it. She hadn't even expected anything. She just wanted to hold the violin one last time, like someone touches a memory before letting it go. Instead, it had awakened something she wasn't prepared for. She didn't know if the teachers would bring it up again. She didn't know if the other students would tease her or ask questions. Mostly, she didn't want attention. She just wanted to get through the day without feeling like all eyes were on her. Still, as she walked toward her first class, she could feel whispers circling around her, faint but sharp. "That's the janitor's daughter. Did you hear what she did yesterday? She played like, I don't even know how to describe it. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe she got lucky. She didn't look lucky." Lina kept her eyes down. She didn't want to listen, but the words stuck to her anyway. She wasn't embarrassed, but she also didn't know how to respond to any of it, even if someone asked her directly. She didn't even know how she felt about her own performance. Proud? Nervous? Confused? It was all tangled together. When she reached her classroom, she sat in the back, hoping to disappear. But disappearing turned out to be impossible. A few students turned around to stare at her. One girl looked like she wanted to ask something, but lost her nerve when the teacher walked in. Throughout the morning, Lina kept catching looks from people she had never spoken to before. Some were curious. Some looked annoyed, as if she had taken something that didn't belong to her. Some looked almost hesitant, like they didn't know how to approach her now. It was strange. She had gone from being invisible to being noticed too much, and neither felt comfortable. The only class she felt calm in was science. The teacher there didn't treat her differently. He didn't look at her longer than usual, didn't act impressed or confused. He just greeted her the same way he always did, and explained the lesson as if nothing unusual had happened. That made her relax for a moment, but as soon as lunch break came, the quiet ended. She was carrying her lunch tray, trying to find a spot where she could eat in peace, when 3 students blocked her path. They weren't the loud kind or the troublemaking type. They were the sort who always sat in the front row, took neat notes, and followed every school rule without question. They looked at her carefully, as if judging whether to speak or turn away. "You played the violin yesterday," one of them said, stating it as if Lina didn't already know. Lina nodded. "Yes? How did you learn? Did someone teach you? Or did you watch videos? Or did you just practice on your own?" The girl asked, her curiosity overflowing. Lina didn't know how to answer quickly. She didn't want to tell her whole life story in the middle of the cafeteria, but she also didn't want to be rude. "My mother taught me," she said quietly. The 3 students nodded slowly. They didn't look satisfied, but they didn't push further. One of them finally said, "It was really beautiful." Lina blinked, surprised. She expected teasing or maybe a skeptical comment, but not kindness. "Thank you," she murmured. They stepped aside and let her pass, leaving her with a strange feeling. Not bad, not good. Just unexpected. She took a seat at an empty table. But she didn't get to stay alone for long. A boy she recognized from the school band approached with his backpack half open, and his hair sticking out in odd angles, like he had run across the entire cafeteria. "Hey," he said, breathing a little too hard. I saw the video." Lina froze. "Video? Yeah? Someone recorded you yesterday." Her stomach dropped. She didn't know whether to panic or stay calm. She had never asked to be recorded. Had the teachers seen it? Had the principal? Had everyone seen it? The boy seemed to realize her fear and rushed to explain. It wasn't a bad video. I mean, it looked amazing. You didn't look embarrassed or anything. But people are sharing it now. Lena didn't know what to say. She felt exposed in a way she hadn't felt before, like something private had been pulled into the open. "I'm sorry," the boy added. "I just wanted to tell you, because, well, I'm the band's violinist. And honestly, you're better than me." "You don't have to say that," she whispered. "But it's true," he insisted. "And the band director wants to talk to you." She shook her head quickly. "No, I don't want." "You don't have to join anything," he said gently. "He just wants to meet you." He seemed impressed. Lena didn't respond. She didn't know what she wanted. She didn't want more attention, but she also didn't want to walk away from the one thing that made her feel alive. After lunch, the day got quieter. People still whispered, but no one else approached her. By the time school ended, she felt drained, like she had run a marathon without moving her feet. When she stepped outside, she saw her father standing by the door, wiping his hands with a towel. He had just finished cleaning one of the hallways. His uniform sleeves were rolled up, and his eyes looked tired but warm when they landed on her. "Long day?" he asked gently. She nodded. "A little." He smiled. "I heard some teachers talking earlier. Something about you playing in the auditorium." Lena stiffened. "Did they sound angry?" "No," he chuckled softly. "More like surprised. One said you made the room quiet. I didn't think you'd ever get that school quiet." Lena smiled for the first time that day. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," he said. "You just showed them something they didn't expect." They walked home together. The evening air felt softer, the sky a pale orange that slowly turned pink. Lena's father talked about his day, how a vending machine got jammed again, how he fixed a broken chair, how a student thanked him for finding a lost backpack. Lena listened quietly, grateful for normal conversation. When they got home, she helped him prepare dinner. While they chopped vegetables, he glanced at her and said, "Do you want to tell me what really happened?" Lena paused. "I played the violin. That's all. People seem to think it was more than that." She hesitated, then told him the full story, how the teachers asked her to play as a joke, how the students expected her to fail, how the music just came out of her without thinking, how the room went silent, how there was now a video she didn't ask for. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back and breathed out slowly. "They shouldn't have asked you like that," he said. "But I'm glad you played." "Why?" "Because your mother would have been proud." Lena swallowed gently. She hadn't heard someone say that in a long time. It made her chest ache, but also gave her a strange comfort. "Do you think I should meet the band director?" she asked quietly. Her father thought for a moment. "Only if you want to. Don't do it because someone else expects it. Don't do it because they suddenly noticed you. Do it only if it feels right to you." She nodded slowly. "I'm not sure yet." "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to decide today." That night, Lena sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight slipped through the window, falling across her blanket in a soft line. She could hear faint noises from the street, cars passing, someone walking their dog, a distant laugh. Everything sounded normal, but inside her mind, everything felt unsettled. She thought about the violin, about the way it felt in her hands. She thought about her mother's gentle instructions, the evenings they spent practicing in the tiny living room, the pride in her mother's eyes when Lena learned a new technique. She thought about how she stopped playing after losing her, because the music hurt too much. But yesterday, For the first time in years, it didn't hurt. It felt like breathing. It felt like remembering, but in a good way. She fell asleep thinking about the violin, not knowing what the next day would bring. The next morning, the school felt even more awake than usual. People looked at Lena with a mix of curiosity and something else, something almost like respect. That confused her even more. During the break between classes, she was called to the office. Her stomach twisted as she walked there, expecting trouble. Maybe someone complained. Maybe the teachers thought she disrupted class. Maybe, but when she stepped inside, she saw the band director sitting beside the assistant principal, both of them looking calm and patient. "Lena," the assistant principal said with a kind smile, "we wanted to speak with you about something good. Don't worry." Lena relaxed only a little. The band director leaned forward. "I saw the video, and I heard from the teachers who were in the auditorium. I don't want to pressure you, but I need to be honest, your playing wasn't just good. It was exceptional." Lena didn't know how to respond, so she stayed quiet. "We'd like to offer you something," he continued. "A chance to receive proper lessons. And if you'd like, a place in the school orchestra." Lena blinked slowly. She hadn't expected anything like that. "It wouldn't cost your family anything," he added quickly. "It would be a school-funded program." Her heart pounded. Everything inside her felt tangled joy, fear, hope, confusion. I don't know," she said softly. "That's perfectly fine," he replied. "Take your time. Think about it. Talk to your father. You're not required to decide today." Lena nodded, grateful for the space dot. When? The following days moved slowly, almost like the world wanted Lena to take her time before choosing what came next. She woke up each morning feeling a little more aware of the change happening around her. Nothing was loud or dramatic, no sudden spotlights or crowds, but little shifts in the air made her feel as if something important was quietly waiting at school. People still whispered about her, but it didn't sting the way it once did. Some students were curious, others confused, and some acted as if they had always believed in her, even though she knew they hadn't. But she didn't mind it anymore. She wasn't playing the violin for them. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She just wanted to understand what the music meant to her now. The band director gave her space like he promised, never pushing. Some days he passed her in the hallway and simply nodded. Other days he left a small practice schedule on a table near the music room, not addressed to her, but clearly meant for her if she wanted it. He handled everything gently, almost like he knew she carried a delicate part of herself she wasn't ready to uncover fully. One afternoon, after classes ended, Lena stayed behind to help her father clean the hallway. She liked these moments. They were quiet, steady, familiar. She knew which trash bins filled faster, which lockers always got stuck, which classrooms were the messiest. Her father worked with calm hands and soft steps, humming under his breath as if the rhythm helped him move through the long day. When they reached the end of the hallway, he paused and leaned on his cart. "Did you think about what the band director said?" "A little," Lena answered. "And I'm scared," she admitted. He nodded slowly, not surprised. "Of what?" "Of feeling too much again," she whispered. "Of remembering things I'm not ready for. Of people watching me. Of messing up." Her father smiled sadly. "Those are all real fears. But they don't have to stop you. You're allowed to feel things. You're allowed to take your time. But you're also allowed to choose something that makes you happy, even if it scares you." Lena looked down at her shoes. "Do you think playing again would help me?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I think not playing has hurt you." She looked up, surprised. "You stopped after your mother passed," he continued softly. "And I never forced you to go back. I didn't want to cause you more pain. But maybe the violin was never the problem. Maybe losing her made you close the door on something she loved too much to leave behind. A warm ache filled her chest. Everything he said felt true, but she wasn't sure how to open that door without letting old sadness fall over her like a shadow. She helped him finish the cleaning, but her mind drifted back to the conversation again and again. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her father washing dishes in the kitchen. She imagined her mother's gentle voice telling her to sit up straight, to relax her shoulders, to trust the bow. Those memories, once painful, now felt soft, like something returning instead of something being taken away. The next day, something unexpected happened. Right after lunch, the assistant principal approached her in the hallway. "Lena, do you have a moment?" Her heart jumped. "Yes, there's someone who'd like to meet you," she said kindly. "If you're comfortable with it." Lena nodded, nervous but willing. She followed her to the music room, a place she had avoided since the performance. When the door opened, she saw a woman standing inside. She looked to be in her 40s, dressed neatly, holding a case that looked old but carefully kept. She had a soft expression, the kind of face that smiled even before the mouth did. "This is Miss Bennett," the assistant principal explained. "She teaches violin outside of school. She works with advanced students, but she's here today because she heard about you." Lena blinked. "About me?" "Yes," the woman said warmly. "I saw the video. But more importantly, I spoke with your teachers. I wanted to see you in person, if that's all right." Lena didn't know what to say. She looked at the assistant principal, who gave her an encouraging nod. "We're not forcing anything," she said. "Just a conversation." Lena stepped inside slowly. The assistant principal closed the door behind her, leaving them alone. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Miss Bennett smiled and gently opened the violin case she had brought. "May I ask," she said lightly, "how long it has been since you've played before that day?" "Years," Lena answered quietly. "And you had no warm-up, no preparation?" "No. That tells me something very important," the woman said. "That your connection to the instrument isn't casual or accidental. It's something deeper, something real." Lena swallowed. "I don't know if I'm ready to play again." "That's completely fine," she said. "I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to share something with you." She lifted the violin gently and held it with both hands. "This belonged to my teacher," she said softly. "He taught me everything I know. He believed music was a bridge, something that helped people cross from fear to courage, sadness to healing. When he passed away, he left me this. And he told me to give it to a student who reminded me of why I started playing." Lena felt something tremble inside her chest. "I don't know you well yet," Miss Bennett continued, "but I saw the way you held the instrument in that video. You weren't showing off. You weren't searching for attention. You were remembering something, and the music remembered you back." Lena felt her eyes sting slightly. She wasn't used to people speaking to her this way, gently, respectfully, as if she mattered. "You don't have to accept lessons," the woman said softly. "You don't have to say yes to anything. But I'd like you to hold this violin." She extended it toward Lena. Her hands shook as she reached out. She hadn't touched a violin since that day in the auditorium. Now, as her fingers wrapped around the polished wood, a warmth traveled through her palms and up her arms. It wasn't magic. It was memory. Human memory. The kind that stays even when everything else changes. Ms. Bennett stepped back. "How does it feel?" "It feels like breathing," Lena whispered. "Then I think you already know your answer," the woman said. But Lena wasn't sure. She wanted to play again, yes, but she also feared everything that came with it. Miss Bennett packed up the violin again. "I will be at the community center every Saturday morning. If you want to learn, come. If you don't, that's all right too. The choice is yours." She gave Lena a warm smile and left the room quietly. When the door closed, Lena stood alone in the silent music room. She looked around at the chairs, the stands, the shelves of instruments some shiny and new, others old and scratched from years of use. It felt like being in the center of a story she wasn't sure she had the courage to finish. That afternoon, as she walked home with her father, she told him everything. He listened without interrupting, just as he always did. When she finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "This teacher sounds patient." "She is." "And she didn't pressure you." "No." He smiled. "Then maybe it's worth trying." "I'm scared," Lena said again, her voice small. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and choosing anyway." His words stayed with her the rest of the night. The next morning, Lena woke up early. Too early. The sun had barely risen, and a pale blue light filled her room. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her shoes. Her father was still asleep, and the apartment was quiet except for the humming refrigerator. She could go to the community center, or she could stay home and pretend she didn't want to. She tied her shoes. When she stepped into the hallway, her father was awake, drinking tea in the kitchen. He looked surprised, but smiled when he saw her. "Going somewhere?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I think I want to try." He didn't say "good job" or "I'm proud of you." Instead, he simply stood up, handed her a warm scarf, and said, "Take your time. I'll be here when you get back." Her steps felt light as she left the apartment. The morning air was cold enough to sting her cheeks, but it helped her stay awake. The walk to the community center took about 15 minutes, though it felt like longer because her thoughts kept swirling. When she reached the building, she paused at the entrance. The door was half open, and she could hear soft music coming from inside, a violin warming up. Slow and steady. She took a deep breath and stepped in. Miss Bennett looked up from adjusting a music stand. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even look excited. She simply smiled, as if she had expected Lena in her own quiet way. "I'm glad you made it," she said gently. Lena nodded. She didn't know what would happen next, whether she would be good or terrible, whether she would cry or laugh, whether old memories would rise like waves. But she stepped forward anyway. "Are you ready to begin?" The woman asked. Lena took a slow breath. "Yes," she said. "I think I am." And for the first time in years, she truly meant it. Lena's first lesson with Miss Bennett was quiet and slow, the kind of slow that didn't feel boring, but comforting, like someone giving her space to breathe again. The room in the community center wasn't large, and the walls still carried faint marks from old posters. A stack of folding chairs sat in the corner, and sunlight stretched across the wooden floor in soft stripes. Nothing looked fancy, but the simplicity made Lena feel safe. Ms. Bennett didn't start with scales or drills the way Lena expected. Instead, she asked gently, "What do you remember about how the violin feels when you play?" Lena hesitated, unsure how to answer. "Warm," she finally said. "Like it knows me." "That's a good place to begin," the woman replied with a smile. They spent the first half of the lesson just letting Lena hold the instrument, adjusting her shoulders, relaxing her grip, reminding her body of old patterns it hadn't used in years. Nothing about it felt rushed. There were no nervous eyes watching her, no pressure to impress anyone. It was just the soft sound of the bow gliding, just long notes that rose and fell in gentle waves. By the end of the hour, Lena felt something strange. Not exhaustion, not fear, something closer to peace. "You have a natural touch," Ms. Bennett said as she packed away the music sheets. "But more importantly, you have heart. The technique will grow. The feeling is already there." Lena flushed slightly, but nodded. She didn't trust herself to say anything without sounding overwhelmed. When she returned home, Her father was waiting by the door with a warm smile. "How'd it go?" "Better than I thought," she said. "A lot better." "I'm glad," he said. "You look lighter." Lena hadn't realized she did, but hearing it made her chest warmed out. The following weeks formed a rhythm she hadn't expected: school, homework, cleaning with her father, and lessons every Saturday. The lessons grew more challenging, but somehow the difficulty made her feel steady rather than stressed. She found comfort in the structure. She found comfort in the music. At school, the whispers faded. People slowly returned to their routines, and Lena blended in again, but in a different way. Now, when people looked at her, the glances didn't feel sharp or mocking. They felt curious or thoughtful or simply neutral. A few students even asked her about her lessons, though they did it quietly, as if they didn't want to overwhelm her. One afternoon, the band director approached her near the library. "I heard you've been taking lessons," he said kindly. "Yes," Lena replied. "I'm glad. I just wanted you to know that the invitation to join the orchestra still stands. No pressure. No deadline." "Thank you," Lena said, meaning it. She didn't say yes. She wasn't ready for big steps. But the idea no longer scared her the way it once had. As weeks turned into a month, Lena's confidence slowly grew. She didn't notice it at first, but Ms. Bennett did. "You're not gripping the bow so tightly anymore," she said during a lesson. "That's a sign you're trusting yourself again." Lena smiled softly. "It doesn't feel as heavy as before?" "That's because the fear is fading," Miss Bennett said. "Fear makes everything heavier." One day, after a lesson, the woman paused before packing up her things. "There's something you should think about," she said. "The community center holds a small recital every season. It's not a competition, just an event where students can share what they've been working on. You wouldn't have to play anything complicated, just something that feels right to you." Lena's eyes widened. "I don't know if I can do that." "You don't have to decide now," Miss Bennett assured her. "But I think performing again could help you understand how much you've grown." The thought lingered with Lena all evening. She mentioned it to her father while drying dishes. "A recital, huh?" he said, trying to sound calm even though his eyes brightened. "It's small," Lena said quickly. "Just a few people." "I'm not sure. You don't have to do it," he said gently. "But I think you're stronger than you realize." That night, Lena sat on her bed holding her practice notebook. The idea of playing in front of others made her stomach twist, but not in the same painful way as before. It was more like the twist you feel right before trying something new. Scary, yes, but exciting too. She didn't give an answer that night, or the next day. But during her next lesson, after playing through a piece without stumbling, she looked up at Miss Bennett and said softly, Maybe I can try." The woman smiled warmly, as though she had been waiting for that moment. "I think that would be wonderful." They spent the next few weeks preparing. Nothing intense or overwhelming, just steady, patient practice. Miss Bennett chose a piece that wasn't too hard, but still carried emotion. Something Lena could pour herself into. "You're not performing to prove anything," she reminded her often. "You're performing to share something human." Those words stuck in Lena's heart. The day of the recital arrived quietly. It wasn't a big event, just a small room with folding chairs and soft lights. A few parents and friends gathered, chatting in low voices. Some students tuned their instruments nervously. Lena stood near the wall, holding her violin case, feeling a familiar tightness in her chest. But this time, she didn't feel alone. Her father was right beside her, dressed in a clean shirt, smiling even though she could see how nervous he was for her. "You're going to do great," he whispered. "I hope so." "You will," he said simply, as if the words were fact. When her turn arrived, Lena stepped forward slowly. The room quieted, not because people expected something shocking, But because everyone was there to listen, really listen, she lifted the violin, feeling the smooth wood against her neck. She took a breath. Her bow trembled slightly, but she steadied it, and then she began. The first note was soft, almost hesitant. The next was clearer. Soon the music flowed from her like a story she had been holding inside for years. The room faded a little, not disappearing, but becoming softer at the edges. All she felt was the rise and fall of the melody, the quiet strength growing inside her, the memory of her mother's hands guiding hers. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't think about the video, or the teachers, or the whispers at school. She only thought about the music, the connection, the healing. Before she realized it, the piece was over. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't the heavy silence from the auditorium months ago. This silence felt warm, like everyone was taking a breath together. Then gentle applause rose, polite, kind, encouraging. Lena lowered her violin slowly. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't overwhelmed. She felt calm, proud even. When she looked toward the back of the room, she saw her father wiping the corner of his eye. After the recital, several people approached her with kind words. One student told her the music made her want to learn an instrument again. Another said the performance felt honest, a word that stayed with Lena all evening. As she and her father walked home, the cold air touched her cheeks, but she barely felt it. She felt warm from the inside out. "I'm proud of you," her father said quietly, breaking the silence. "Thank you," Lena whispered. "You didn't just play well," he said. "You let yourself feel again. That takes more courage than anyone realizes." Lena looked at the ground, smiling softly. "It felt right, and that's how you know you're on the right path," he said. The days after the recital felt different. Not because anything big changed, but because Lena changed. She walked with more confidence. She spoke with more ease. Even school felt less heavy. The band director congratulated her, and though she still didn't join the orchestra, she didn't rule it out either. During her next lesson, Miss Bennett said, "I think your mother would have loved that performance." Lena swallowed gently. "I hope so. I'm sure of it," the woman said. Lena didn't cry. She didn't feel the sharp pain she'd once felt when thinking about her mother. Instead, she felt something much gentler, like a soft hand resting on her shoulder. As the season changed and the community center prepared for another recital, Lena found herself practicing without being asked. She started humming melodies while helping her father clean at school. She began carrying her violin case with a quiet kind of pride. One afternoon, while wiping desks, her father said with a smile, "You know, the music follows you now, even when you're not playing." Lena laughed softly. "Maybe it never left. Maybe you just needed to hear it again," he said. She thought about that often. Months later, when the school orchestra sent her another invitation, gentle, welcoming. Without pressure, she didn't say no. She didn't say yes immediately either. She simply held the paper in her hands and felt calm. She would choose when she was ready. And this time, she believed she would be, because the music wasn't a burden anymore. It was hers, a part of her past, a part of her healing, and now a steady part of her future. And as Lena walked home that afternoon, violin case in hand, she realized something beautifully simple. She was no longer afraid of being seen. She was ready to be heard.